a year. But as our next story demonstrates, money is only one measure of compensation, and it's not always the measure that matters most. Certainly not for Jim Matthews, who walked away from the stock options and year-end bonuses at a Fortune 500 company to become the chief financial officer at CARE, the relief agency, applying what he knows of corporate money management to help run humanitarian assistance efforts. We were with Jim Matthews earlier this month as he came face-to-face with Kosovo refugees in Albania and the reality of financing their care.
Lunch? Let's ask how many folks live here.
7 people.
All 7 in your family?
Yes, they are all members of the family.
Jim Matthews at one of CARE's tent camps in Albania. With 2,500 refugees, it's one of the smallest CARE operates here and one of the farthest from Kosovo. It's near the Adriatic coast. Definitely not an accountant's normal place of work.
Does that put a little more of a face behind the numbers? I mean, numbers are kind of bloodless.
Sure. Coming out and getting in projects, even if it's not your day-to-day job, is like a refresher course in what it's all about.
What it's all about here, he found, is the basics: food, clothing, shelter. Food comes in by the van load, and when the van breaks down, somebody tows it with an old car and a rope. Shelter is a tent. Water and windproof, maybe, but the floor is just mats over mud. Clothing is whatever they could carry here. It must do for now. For Jim Matthews, who used to fly first class and sleep in 5-star hotels, the refugees provided a lesson in enduring hardship.
It would be a lot more difficult to go to sleep if you were in one of those tents, and if you were cold, and if the rain came in, and if there were 10 people within, the 100 square feet that you were allotted.
As he learned, that's just how people here are living.
You don't really realize what you've got until you see people who don't have it. What does this say?
It's a clear water to drink.
Clear water to drink. It's when you get out here and you look and see what's being applied, and you see that it costs that amount because there's this reservoir that's got to be filled up every day, and if you don't, then the people don't have the 20 liters of water that they need just to sustain life every day.
He saw water filtration equipment that creates that reservoir and Swiss engineers maintaining the filters. Examples of what he came to evaluate: how money flows in an emergency that's changing fast, where CARE's response may have to be quicker than its financial controls usually permit.
And here we are setting up a system for storage.
Over the past 5 weeks, CARE has spent $6 million in Albania and Macedonia, moving in almost overnight to manage 4 camps and help build a 5th, which opens this week. Right now, 83,000 Kosovars live under CARE's tents.
Let's have a look.
Jim Matthews found cooking tents where 10 families share stovetops and picnic tables, and where, despite the conditions, this stew smelled delicious.
It's a lot more real coming here and realizing that it's not just tents for living, but you've got to have tents for cooking, other supplies, you've got to have latrine facilities.
Here, refugees have those facilities and security from attack, too. As NATO thunders overhead, the camp dwellers get down to a daily routine. They feel safe, the desperation of their exodus from Kosovo now in the past. And so, Jim Matthews was surrounded by children who smiled all the time.
I have 4 children. They're all boys. They love cute girls. They would love to meet you.
Seeing refugee children always reminds Jim Matthews how fortunate his own family is back at home in Atlanta. Even before he left on this trip, he pointed out their blessings: freedom from want, freedom from war.
Do you know why they're having a war?
There's a man, I can't remember his name, but he's killing people in the other part of Kosovo.
Dinner table talk did not include these issues back when Jim Matthews was working his way up the executive ladder at Delta Airlines. He was a finance guy, eventually becoming corporate treasurer, wrestling down costs across a system that included 550 planes, 65,000 people, and offices in 33 countries. He loved it.
I had a good life at Delta. I did well financially. I worked with nice people. I had the respect of my peers, and in a terrific working environment to go to and from every day.
He wasn't looking for a change. Then a headhunter came out of the blue to recruit him with a letter describing the position at CARE.
I took that letter home and I showed it to my wife. And I didn't say, this is a job I want, even though, in fact, my heart was pounding and I thought, gee, this sounds like something I'd like to look into.
Helping him pack for Albania, his wife Sunny recalled reading the letter.
It was an opportunity for him to be able to use his financial background and his expertise in an organization that really counted for something and, you know, was doing something for humanity.
She read the letter, and I remember we were standing in the kitchen and she put it down on the butcher block standing right next to me, and she said, "That sounds just like you."
On the other hand, he had a good shot at becoming Delta's next chief financial officer. Serious power and serious money, a package nearing 7 figures all told.
Are you fulfilled by a bigger paycheck? Well, to some extent, but that's pretty temporal. I mean, once you deposit the check in the bank, you know, a week later, you're not thinking that much about it. When you expect to be drawing away, it's because somebody comes along with a better package. Well, CARE came along with a better package, but it wasn't financial.
As they weighed the choice, it wasn't just the potential for future riches they'd be giving up. The income he was actually earning then would be slashed.
If you actually look at what my pay was for the last few years at Delta, I took more than a 50% pay cut to leave.
But there were other considerations besides money, such as values to pass on to the children. He says what he discovered at CARE headquarters in Atlanta was impressive. First, they had financial controls on their $400 million annual budget as sophisticated as anything he'd seen at Delta.
I just wanted to find out how we're doing on the investment report. I was tremendously impressed. When I walked in and met with the finance, the administrative, the procurement people, I realized that if a donor said, "How did you spend my dollars?" it was going to be there and we're going to be accountable.
Then, meeting CARE's people in the field, he found a depth of international experience and commitment he called humbling for a headquarters guy.
It's good for me to visit projects, but you know, I'm not the hero. You know, the people who come in here and do this for 20 or 30 years of their lives all over the world, you know, they're the heroes.
Such as the Canadian leading CARE's team in Albania, the English security director, English logistics chief, the Chinese finance chief. And always he found prudence with money, even shown by the Quebecois camp director, whose day is one emergency after another.
I have my cash deposit voucher.
And it's all on a cash basis here, I'm assuming, is that right?
The German medical student who showed Jim Matthews around the camp has already worked for CARE in 4 countries.
In Rwanda, in Zaire, in Burundi, and in Burma.
You've managed camps in all of those situations?
Working in camp and managing them as well.
And encountered more risk there than any headquarters staffer, as Jim Matthews was acutely aware.
There are a lot of heroes here. These people's lives are sometimes in danger.
This is for security purposes. We do a personal evaluation, not an evaluation, information sheet for everyone. So most people that are coming in here are in flux and they're going into the field within a day or two.
They've got digital cameras and banks of laptops. Another chief financial officer might blanch at the expense, but Jim Matthews won't, not after this trip. No quarrel either with the 4-wheel drive trucks, the telephones that bounce conversations off satellites, the 2 buildings at their Tirana headquarters, supervision for all their camps, the second building put up almost overnight by their Albanian landlord. All essential, and none a threat to the efficiency that enables CARE to direct 91 cents of every dollar it gets straight to the needy. The birthday cake for Jason Lawler of Ottawa? All right, another story maybe. At least nobody wasted money on plates.
Wow. You know, you could just give everybody a fork and let them have at it.
That's kind of the finance guy's approach to cakes.
No, the finance guys approach the cakes as they want to know who approved the expenditure.
At CARE, he says, the approval process just seems to yield more results than it did in the corporate world, where the word emergency had another meaning.
Is the panic that's thrown into it worth the product that comes out of it?
When you had a corporate life.
Yeah. You know, the day's emergency was whether the memo got edited and got out and everybody was happy with it. I find that the care world has to anticipate more, not from a financial standpoint so much as the standpoint of what are the human needs that need to be met. And sometimes that takes on an even more critical nature than all those financial emergencies I had at Delta.
For Jim Matthews, the relief effort was as exciting as a joint business venture with multinational partners. But here, nobody knows how the deal will end, and the lives of these people are in the balance. How does that compare with what he did in a corporation, working to create wealth for shareholders?
I think pride and self-worth are a kind of wealth, and often that's what you'll see in an individual who has literally improved their lives, particularly on a sustainable basis from this kind of work. That self-worth is itself a type of wealth that even on an individual basis is very, very evident.
Jim Matthews left the camp determined to free up CARE's accounting practices to permit quicker responses to the needs of refugees. In the 2 days it took him to get from Albania back to CARE headquarters in Atlanta, 20,000 more Kosovar refugees straggled into camps in Albania, needing help.
Still to come.